You've heard the saying, don't let good be the enemy of great. It's meant to signify not settling for what you have and striving for the greatest that you can achieve. Very valid point. But here's something else that may be more important to a lot of you entrepreneurs. Don't let great be the enemy of good. A lot of times when we're trying to take action, we try to analyze and optimize every single step of the process, and we are stuck in the analysis paralysis. We analyze it to death that we never even take the first step. Let's say you're trying to shoot YouTube videos. You analyze every part of the script that you're trying to say. You analyze how your video looks, you analyze how your audio sounds, you analyze how your background is, how your lighting is, etc., etc. Or let's say you're trying to figure out how to grow your business. You're analyzing and you're trying to optimize every single step of the process, and you can optimize each step in 100 different ways. You end up with a million different ways you can optimize this. And if you think about it, if you keep thinking about it forever, you'll never even take the first step. Reminds me of Zenos Paradox. Zenos says one can never cross a room of finite distance. He says, for example, if Atlanta wants to cross a room, before she could cross the room, she has to cross half the room. And before she could cross half the room, she has to cross a quarter of the room. Before she could cross a quarter of the room, she has to cross eighth of the room, and so on and so forth, until you end up with an infinite number of steps. And since no one can ever take infinite number of steps, Atalanta can never ever cross the room. And in fact, she can never even take the first step, because no matter how small you think the first step needs to be, you can always divide that into another half. So the step that you thought was the first step wasn't the first step after all, because there's another step before that needs to be the first step. Since the first step is even not possible, Zeno says that all motion is basically an illusion. So with philosophy, he basically proves that, with philosophical argument, he proves that all motion is essentially an illusion. There's another similar argument called the Achilles and the Tortoise, proposed I think by Lewis Carroll, where Achilles and the Tortoise are in a race, and Achilles says, "Oh, I'll beat you super easily. I'll give you 100 meters head start." And the tortoise says, "Oh, you think you can beat me, huh?" And Achilles says, "Yeah, of course, I'll beat you, no trouble." And the tortoise says, "No, you can't. And in fact, I'll prove it to you that you can't, just with a simple argument." And Achilles says, "Okay, go ahead." And the tortoise says, "Okay, so let's say you give me 100 meters head start. By the time you get to the 100 meters, I'd have gone farther, right? How much farther do you think I'd have gone?" And Achilles says, "Okay, yeah, sure, maybe 3 meters. And Achilles says, "Okay, so you'll have to cross the 3 meters, right?" And the tortoise says that. And Achilles says, "Sure. So by the time you cross the 3 meters, I'd have gone farther, right? How much farther do you think I'd have gone?" And Achilles says, "Oh, I don't know, a quarter of a meter." And the tortoise says, "Okay, now by the time you cross the quarter of a meter, I'd have gone farther, right? And you still need to catch up with me. I'll still be ahead of you." And Achilles is like, by this time, he knows he's kind of heading into a trap. So this argument ends up in an infinite regression argument, and turns out the tortoise says to Achilles that you can never beat me, because no matter how close you get to me, I'll always be ahead of you, because I'd have always gone farther ahead. So you can never beat me. So it's that type of argument. So when you try to analyze, when you try to optimize every single step of the process to make sure it is perfect, to make sure that you take the very best first steps, you'll never even move. Because how do you know you're taking the best first steps? You can never know. So the only way to approach this is just take the first step. Just take the first few steps. Take the first 10, first 100 steps, and see how the market reacts to it, and then pivot based on that. because you can always steer a moving car much easier than you can steer a stationary car. So don't let great be the enemy of good. Just move. Just take the first few steps, and don't let all motion become an illusion because you're analyzing it to death.